before we move on to the poll, just got an interesting question, if we can make it real. Wendy Cole, morning Wendy, long-time supporter of CWTL, thank you. What's a tangible example of kindly holding a staff member accountable? Can you share an example or two, please?
Yeah. Hi, Wendy. I always say people want to know what's expected of them. Yeah. People want to know how they're performing against that expectation, and people want to know what's next for them. So that when I talk about kind leadership, that is part of it. We've all had to, in some part of our leadership journey, say goodbye to people, because as you said, David, it's much kinder to set people free when they're not performing or they're not suited to a job role. So, we've all had to do that. I've had to do that. And can I tell you, I've done it with kindness, because I see it as that. I see it as setting people free. This is not the right place for you. This is not the right role for you. There is going to be something better out there for you that is going to be much more suited, where you get up every day and live your purpose and passion. So really, really important. And we can have those conversations, those tough conversations with kindness. And I encourage people to do that. Yeah.
And I think just on about setting people free, I think one of the industries that does that brilliantly is the restaurant business. Whereas a lot of the top chefs were always celebrating, a junior chef moving through and then going off to, work overseas or start their own restaurants. And I noticed that as a profession and an industry is really good at setting their people free. Whereas I think some of the more corporate environments don't always do that. It becomes almost like a personal slight. Well, why do you want to join them and leave us?
Yes. Yeah, it does. And I've always... someone said to me the other day in an interview, Cole, you tip everything upside down and look at it the other way. And I kind of do, which might be part of my superpower. I don't know. But, I really agree with that. And I think, there are organizations, and mine was one of them, where people would get to a certain level and there was nowhere else for them to go. And I would say, well, what an awesome achievement that that person's at that level and can now go on to bigger and better things. Of course, you never want to see anyone leave your organization, but most of the people that would leave my organization would be because there was nowhere left for them to go. So I think that's a fabulous thing for leaders to be really proud of.
Yeah, and I think it's that journey, isn't it? You're leaving, the person's leaving in a better position, state, call it what you will, than when they join the organization, and they've helped the organization advance as well. How do you measure that? So I'm going to get Pete to put up the poll that we'd like audience participation in. So what's the greatest challenge facing leaders today? Please get involved. Morale, engagement, burnout, culture, and other. What does everyone think? I think the culture piece is interesting. Building that culture in the remote world is certainly a challenge, right?
Absolutely. It's a great question. It could, there's a bit of all of the above in there maybe as well, but it is a great question, because there are a lot of challenges facing leaders today. And, again, I say that those ones that had, really great foundations to start with, and their people really got up every day and went to work because they love the organization. There was this great environment, great culture, are the ones that are going to really thrive and come through the other end of this.
And do you think, here we go. We'll have a look at that. So we've got burnout, 41%, culture, 35%, engagement, 18%, which is interesting, and morale, 6%.
Yes.
Do you want to talk through those a bit, please, Colleen?
Yeah, it's really interesting that straight away the burnout has popped up as the first one. And, we're going to talk a little bit about burnout today, David, I think in the second part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that is very much a direct correlation with what's happening in our world today. Particularly, we've had burnout. I had burnout in 2007, and I'll touch on that. But I think that the environments that we're working in, and, people were getting up and either getting on a train or driving to work and stopping at their coffee shop and having a conversation with someone. There was this commute to and from work for a lot of people. Now we get up in the morning and we're in our office the second we wipe the sleep out of our eyes. And we're there until all hours of the night for a lot of people. So there is a lot of burnout happening at the moment, I've got to say. And a lot of people I'm working with, is how do we, if we're on that train to burnout, how do we get off that train to burnout? Because it's really not a great place to be. So I'm not surprised that is the number one, on the poll.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're going to talk more about burnout now. And also, I just say, I hope everyone's doing okay. We've got a great community here. So if anyone ever wants a conversation, just reach out to us. It's really important to help each other, to move through this. So can you talk to us a bit about the signs of burnout, please, Colleen? And would you mind sharing your own personal experiences in 07, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. There are so many signs of burnout. And, sometimes people think it's when I cannot get out of bed, I'm burnt out. But there are so many signs along the way. It's exhaustion, it's lack of energy, it's, you can have constant fatigue. We can even have sleep disorder or insomnia. We can be highly emotional and irrational. We can have concentration and memory problems. There are so many things that affect burnout. And the thing with burnout is it doesn't just affect us as people or leaders or humans or mums or whatever the hats we're wearing. It affects everyone around us, family, friends, teams, because people don't get the best version of you. Yeah. So, my story of burnout is in 2007, I had been just going and going and going and going. I had been in retail for a long time. I had, three young children. I had Macy, who was only 2, and Trent was 9, and Jake was 10 or 11 or something like that. And I hit burnout. And I describe myself as a red Ferrari. And I talk about this in my book. And I was this red Ferrari that had never stopped. It had never pulled into the pits. It had never, pumped up its tires. It had never gone in for a service. It had never done any of that. And I literally hit burnout. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to get up and do it again tomorrow. I was general manager of Sportsgirl at the time. And I came home that night and said to my husband, I'm done. I'm just not doing it anymore. And it wasn't because I didn't love my job. I absolutely loved what I did. I just had nothing left in the tank. So, I went in the next day and I pulled those sandbags off my shoulders and I resigned. And that's very much me. I'm very much all or nothing kind of person. And lucky for me, they didn't accept my resignation. And instead I took nearly 3.5 months off. And I went down to my happy place, which was Sorrento. And I put that red Ferrari in for a very well overdue service. And, I had to change the way I lived my life, because I wouldn't have been hitting my 40s I was only 36 or 37 years of age. I wouldn't have been hitting my 40s and 50s. So I really had to look at the way I was living my life and put some really big changes in there to start living a life without burnout. And 4 months later, I came back and I went on to I came back in the role of CEO of Suzanne, and then went into the role of CEO of Sportsgirl. So then was a CEO for 13 years, and I lived that life without burnout.
Yeah, fantastic. And can you talk a bit around some of the things that you would advise people to do now to avoid burnout?
Yeah. There's so many things, and there's lots of tools and tips in my book. But I would say, David, the biggest thing when I work with people around burnout is boundaries. And people don't have boundaries. And even in, again, this world we're living in is people need to put boundaries in place. And, the boundaries support our well-being and really empower us to make healthy choices, whether that be emotionally, physically, mentally. Our boundaries are about protecting the person, protecting the asset, which is you. It's like putting stop signs around yourself. And, so we really need to do that, because when we don't, we start to become overwhelmed and suffocated, and stress and anxiety kicks in, and resentment even kicks in. And then we end up at burnout. So I write about a whole lot of tips in my book, which is communicate clearly. People can't live within your boundaries if they don't know what they are. So really communicate your boundaries. Don't be afraid to say no. As people pleasers, which many of us are, and I'm sure there's many on here today that are people pleasers, we often say yes when we really want to say no, because saying yes becomes like a bit of an addiction if you're a people pleaser. Okay, I say that, it makes us feel important and needed and validated. So saying yes makes us feel great. So start to be comfortable with saying no. The other thing I would say about burnout is we need to put some boundaries around technology. And I had a Mentor Me group last night, a group of women, and I said, does anyone have a problem with technology, which is Facebook, Instagram, anything that you're looking at a device? And they all went, yes. And there's no boundaries today. So in our face 24/7. So we have to put some boundaries around those things. Otherwise, we are hitting burnout because we're never switching off. So, and, you know, technology is one of the, as much as it's fabulous, we all use it, it's one of the biggest sources of anxiety as well. And, you know, I say to the people I work with, your passion and purpose and dreams is not going to be sitting on your mobile phone. Okay. So let's look up. So, you know, setting these boundaries are really important. One of the big things I had when I was a CEO is that I had what I call set your focus. And so my work was my work and my home was my home and my home was my sanctuary. So when I was at work, I took no personal calls, unless of course it was urgent and it was my EA knew, unless it was my kids and it was urgent, I don't want to talk to anyone. So no personal calls, no internet banking, no shopping online, no scrolling through Instagram. I set my focus, and that was my work and my people. And then I would do the same when I got home. My focus was my children and my family and my husband. And, you know, having these bookends of your day, how do you start your day and how do you finish your day, is really important to avoiding burnout as well.
Yeah.
So many tips. I could talk all day. I could write another whole book on burnout.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing. And it got me thinking around, there's a podcast I often recommend called the High Performance Podcast. And, you know, social media is obviously good in many ways, but also you need to remember that you're getting a very curated view, which isn't normally actually what that person's life's like. So, you know, we need to be careful of that as a society, particularly with younger generations coming through. And on the 80-20, which I know you speak about, and maybe we can weave that into a quick comment around the work-life piece. But I always say to people, I said, you've got your proactive, which should be your maybe a daily plan, maybe start the day with some yoga or walk or mindfulness or having a lunchtime walk, leaving the technology at home. And that's your proactive, ideal way to lead your day. But then you obviously need to be flexible, which I guess is your 20, that stuff will come in businesses and you need to react to stuff, put fires out, whatever it might be. But it's trying to have a bit of routine, a bit of structure as much as it's possible, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I say to people, it doesn't matter what your life imbalance is. Again, I said, I don't put work into life and one in the other. They have to coexist together. And it doesn't matter what yours is. You might say your life imbalance, David, for you might be 50-50. You might love 50% being nice and calm. And, you know, that brings calmness and routine and all of those kind of things. And then on the flip side, you might like the other 50% to be chaos and innovation and resilience. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you recognize what that life imbalance is for you. And when the scales start to tip, and that chaos starts to creep up past what you want that to look like, then you need to add, change, or delete something to get that back in that life balance, because that's where we perform the best. And, you know, I would ask everyone to think about, and, you know, for those people that get my book, and thank you again for sharing that with everyone, you know, there is a whole section there of how, you know, what is your life imbalance and what are some of the tools and tips that you can put in place to make sure you start to move that dial so that you are truly being authentic and living that life imbalance that you deserve.
That's fantastic. And that's a really good exercise to go through. We so much gold today. It's brilliant. Thank you for sharing. We're going to talk briefly about confidence. So what does confidence mean to you? And can you offer some tips in building self-confidence, please?
Yeah, it's a really big one, and it's probably one of the biggest chapters outside of leadership in my book. And to be honest, it wasn't there when I started writing my book. And then once I started with working with a lot of people, I'm like, this is just such a big challenge. And, you know, confidence is about us showing up as our most authentic self. It's about us taking action despite our fears. It's about owning mistakes. It's about standing up for what we believe in. You know, I talk about confidence being comfortable in your own skin and living a life of fulfillment, purpose, and passion. And, you know, that takes a lot of work. As I said, confidence is a muscle. Confidence is something we have to work on all the time. And the more we use it, the more it builds. You know, confidence is contagious. Surround yourself with confident people. You know, it really does. It does a lot for your confidence. You know, there are so many tools and tips, but confidence again starts with you. It starts with you about looking at the person in the mirror, and, you know, it's the willingness to try. You know, when we try, we either succeed or we fail, but when we fail, we learn. When we learn, we build skills. When we build skills, we build competency. And when we build competency, we build confidence. So I would say to everyone out there, have the willingness to try.
Yeah, fantastic. And last question, knowing what you know now, what would you tell the 21-year-old Colleen?
Wow, I would sit her down and have a really good chat to her and say, listen here. No, I would say, look, I would say be true to yourself, really be true to yourself. And I would say, believe in yourself and give everything a go and give everything your best. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect before you start. Sometimes I'm a real perfectionist, so I have to work really hard on that. So I have to tell myself it doesn't have to be perfect, just have a go. And I would say that to everyone out there, because you are going to be enough. You are going to be good enough when you give it your best.
Fantastic. So we're out of time. So I'd suggest people connect with Colleen if they're not already on LinkedIn, and we'll obviously share LinkedIn details as well. Thank you so much for your time, Colleen. It's been an amazing discussion, so much wisdom to share with everyone. So I know you're really busy, so we really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And your book's brilliant, so we're delighted to share some of that, some copies with people. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Look after yourselves, look after each other. And as Curtis Mayfield sang, you've got to keep on keeping on. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.